I just thought I'd try that. Another week and another happy snack. Hey, it's Wei from the Six Figure Academy. Welcome to another live happy snack at noon, where we share little happy snacks about money and prosperity, so that you can increase your money flow, optimize your mindset, and more importantly, create life mastery around happiness for the self-empowered human, and that is you. Now, this week we are going to be talking about anxiety attacks. Why? Because a lot of what we do here is to help people around anxiety, specifically around money anxiety, which then leads to all other types of anxiety. And anxiety is an interesting thing, but by the time it becomes a full-blown anxiety attack, which we're seeing a lot more of, and I'll explain a little bit of why that is, it's interesting because anxiety is a very unique emotion. It is probably the only emotion that can only be felt in the future. See, what anxiety is a future-based fear, which then leads to symptoms that let us know that we're having anxiety. Now, unlike all the other emotions like anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, the undesirable ones, we're not going to be talking about the happy ones. We're not talking about those things. But unlike the other ones, this is the only one that can't be felt in the present. All the other emotions are felt in the now, in the present. Now, the question may say, well, Wei, how come when I think of a memory, I can feel the emotions from that memory, be it good or bad? Well, what's actually happening on a deep psychological level, on an unconscious level, is that when you access a memory, you are literally transporting yourself mentally and emotionally back in time. In order for you to experience that emotion of that memory that is attached to that memory, your mind literally has to see and feel and believe that it's there in that moment. So it's a really cool thing. Once you understand that, you realize that the unconscious mind, which is quantum by its existence, the conscious mind is what makes it more linear, more present. The unconscious mind is not attached to space or time. And so this is a very important thing to understand, so that you can start to deconstruct and decipher the challenges that we impose upon ourselves, such as anxiety attacks. So when I'm talking about anxiety attacks, a lot of times, especially these days, especially with everything that has been going on, more and more people are experiencing some form of anxiety attacks. We're seeing more people coming into our organizations, our students and our clients, and they're like, how do we deal with this anxiety? I'm taking medication for this anxiety, which I'm not here to say that you shouldn't take medication, as long as you recognize that the medication should not be a permanent integration of your life. There are people who buy into the belief that anxiety pills are now because of some kind of genetic thing. But the reality is, none of us were born anxious. Okay. Some of us were born with a higher propensity to access states of anxiety, but it doesn't mean we were born knowing how to be anxious. Because of culture, because of societal beliefs and perceptions and how we were nurtured to perceive life, that's what actually creates the anxiety. We don't just get up and all of a sudden have anxiety. There is a trigger that happens, then a certain amount of steps, what we call a strategy, that your mind goes through: if this, then that; if this, then that; if this, then that; if this, then that, which then leads to the future-based fear. In other words, anxiety is a fear of a circumstance that has yet to even happen. I was like, well, Wei, I have money and financial problems now, and it's making me feel anxious. Well, think of it this way. The money problems themselves are not what's giving you anxiety. It's the potential what might happen should this current circumstance continue down the road in the future. That is what is going to give you anxiety. That is what is going to give you the future-based fear. You present the same financial problems to an infant. You present the same financial problems to a kid that is just learning how to understand language. They will have no idea how to even understand or how to even respond to that challenge. You go to an infant and says, oh my God, we have so many bills to pay. The kid will go, goo goo gaga, goo goo, what? No, they don't know. Now, what the child will potentially pick up is your emotional state of being, the energy and the frequency that you're putting out as a result, which is they're picking up the anxiety. So, can we teach our children anxiety? Yes, just stay in a state of anxiety. You don't even have to tell them why you're anxious. You can just have them feel it, and then they can figure it out. And thus, they grow up associating that sense of anxiety with something that they perceived when they felt that from you. Do you see how kind of vicious that could be, that vicious cycle of teaching anxiety to generations down the road? So anxiety is a learned behavior response to a set of stimuli, which then, depending on whether you handle it or take care of it or not, as time goes on, continued response to this, like a miniature PTSD, it turns into this big loop, which eventually leads to an anxiety attack. The reason why it's so important to understand and how to unpack and understand how anxiety works and what is an anxiety attack actually is so that you can then very precisely understand how to deconstruct it and then eliminate it. The problem with most people who have anxiety attacks, they have no idea where it's coming from. They don't understand the nature of how anxiety actually works. And then they get stuck and just think that they just need to take a pill and it'll make it all better. Throughout the years, we have helped so many of our students and clients get off of those pills, recognizing, having them embrace, not saying that it's anything wrong, but recognizing that the medication is simply a stopgap so that you can get to a certain point where you can holistically resolve that challenge and be self-empowered to not have to deal with that. Again, consult with your physician to make sure you have a good one that understands what we're talking about here. Okay, so now that you understand a little bit of what is happening and you realize that you don't just suddenly become anxious for no reason, there is a trigger which then leads to a certain amount of steps, which then at some point tells your mind to say, okay, great, start exhibiting the symptoms of anxiety. Now, anxiety, remember, I just said, is a future-based fear. And because it's a future-based fear, it is fearing for something that has yet to happen, which means in order for you to maintain that state of anxiety for that anxiety attack, whether it be for money or anything else, you need to eliminate all other potential end results in the future. In other words, all other possibilities in the future have to be either muted out or put aside or delete, distorted, or generalized so that all you can focus on for that anxiety to run its course is that one end result that you're afraid of. Now, that fear of that end result is not the only thing that is going on. And this is what leads to how are we going to resolve this? What we want to do is we want to get to the root cause of what it's actually doing to protect you, what it is actually doing to help you on some deep level. It may not feel like it's helping you when you're having that attack moment, but deep down inside, what your unconscious mind has learned to do, whether it be dysfunctional or not, it has learned to use this as a way for self-protection. Think about it. If you're fearing for something that potentially might happen in the future, having an anxiety attack may influence you to make a different decision so that that potential end result in the future doesn't happen. What you want to do to make sure that you stop having these anxiety attacks is kind of follow through with that. Okay, what if this does happen? When this potential in the future that you're afraid of that happens, what does it allow you to do, or what does it allow you to not do? And you explore all those possibilities, because what it's going to do is going to allow you to get to the bottom of why you're using this anxiety attack to either not feed or feed a certain belief deep down inside about yourself. For example, had a client who had money anxiety, and basically every time they made a little bit more money, they were exhibiting more money anxiety. I know, sounds weird. Most people have money anxiety, or most people that we know of that are exhibiting money anxiety is because they don't have enough money. Well, this person actually had this self-sabotaging routine of not making money and then losing it all, making money and losing it all. A lot of us go through that. This particular individual would make a lot of money and they would get an anxiety attack until that money was gone. And when the money was gone, the anxiety attacks would also disappear. And the reason being, when we kind of followed through the whole entire pathway, that if they held on to that money, then there was a potential that they would lose all their friends, that the fear that they would be judged, and they would fear that they would be robbed, and then they had the fear to pay so much taxes that it created an overwhelming sense of anxiety. And then when they self-sabotage, so to speak, themselves back to a certain threshold, that anxiety went away. The programming and the strategy, however, did not. And this is what was debilitating their ability to grow their business. So what happened was, you don't resolve the anxiety itself, because that's simply a feedback mechanism. That's a symptom. You go all the way through, you follow through on what its purpose actually is. Then you go back to where you learned, how you learned to believe that, to have those beliefs in place, resolve those beliefs, and that anxiety will no longer be needed anymore. In other words, that technique or that strategy to protect that person simply retired because there was no purpose. That's what you can do to unpack it. You kind of follow through. Another way to do this is, remember, the anxiety is fear of a future end result that has yet to even happen. So what you can then do, remember, the unconscious mind can actually transport itself throughout time because it doesn't care about time. You can go to basically imagine a future where the end result is different than what you are anxious about, and then bring in as much detail to that imagination so that you could start to present to your unconscious mind or your entire mind and your entire ecosystem of self a different result to contrast and compare, and thus giving your mind a different choice of perspective, a different choice of interpretation, and a different opportunity to not use anxiety as a tool to protect yourself. Once you start to embrace anxiety and anxiety attacks as a feedback mechanism and not the problem in and of itself, that's when you can truly get to the bottom of it and stop these attacks from ever happening again. Again, if the attacks are so overwhelming that you can't even get yourself clear-headed enough to go through these steps, then yes, medication is absolutely helpful. We've recommended that to a lot of clients working with their doctors and everything, to at least give them a breath of fresh air, a moment to breathe, so that they can actually do this work. So depending on how severe and where you are, again, consult your physician or consult your doctor to make sure that you are able to, and set the intention, of course, to make sure that, hey, doctor, this is a stopgap. I don't want to be on this forever. I just need this to clear my head so I can actually find a holistic solution to get to the bottom of it all. I know this is a lot deeper and is a lot longer, but at the end of the day, imagine if this is something that you've been dealing with, even if it's not a full-blown attack and it's just anxiety, imagine a life without that and how much happier you would be. So hopefully you enjoyed that happy snack. If you have more questions about this or something that you wish I can go deeper on a different happy snack episode, comment below. If you like this, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, then give us a thumbs down for feedback so we know what we can do to provide the best happy snacks for you to help transform your life and become even more self-empowered, an even more self-empowered human being. Other than that, have a fantastic week, and I will see you, I guess, in the next happy snack episode. Okay, see ya.